EJ, you know what the New York Jets need even more of?
I got a lot of answers here. What do you think they need more of?
Attention.
That ain't it.
Nobody's talking about the New York Jets ever.
And nobody cares. There's nobody there. Camp is empty. Complete wasteland.
Fans are not hyped at all.
They're going to come out of nowhere.
Fucking every year we do this, man. Every year. This is the Jets' year.
Might be. Maybe this is the year that we make Rich Eisen happy.
First of all, I feel bad because, boy, he's been through it.
Yes. All Jets fans at this point, if they've been fans of the team for multiple decades, have seen some shit.
But he is conditioned now where even if he says he believes in the back of his head, he knows what's coming.
He's like Cubs fans before the World Series.
God bless him.
Yeah.
I love Rich. I genuinely want the Jets to be good this year because he's earned it. Their fans have earned it. They dealt with front row seat to the Patriots for 20 years, front row seat now to the ascension of Josh Allen. You got the Dolphins with an unbelievable amount of hype. Like, good God, throw Jets fans a bone. Just a little one. Just like a little baby 11-win season. You know, a playoff run. Give them something. And, you know, anything on top of that's gravy. They'll take it.
I don't know. They might not be so poor this year, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we have a lot to go over today. Schematic nuances, personnel changes, both large and small, mostly large. They have a draft class, again, that we like a lot. Free agency stuff we got to go over. Literally everything you could possibly want to know about the 2023 Jets and even a little bit about the 2022 Jets that you're probably just going to skip on right over because, good God.
If you're
if
you're well-conditioned Jets fans, you'll do that. You'll do that.
If you're a Jets fan at all, you're going to like this episode. So, sit back, relax. We got a lot to go over. And with that, Jay, Autumn, Anthony, roll the intro. Welcome back once again to the Bootleg Football Podcast, Sleepaway Camp Edition. Again, I mean, good God, what more could you ask for?
No counselors? Oh, wait, we have that.
A lot more beer than we drank at actual Sleepaway. Well, I don't know. Ours was nefarious, but no, we're talking Jets today. Again, lots to go over. Jets Nation has been long suffering. Long suffering. But if there was ever a year for legitimate hype that we don't think is going to come around and bite them in the ass, this is probably the year. And so I'm excited to talk about this team. I have yet to watch Hard Knocks. By the time this comes out, I think the first episode of Hard Knocks is going to be out. Obviously, I haven't seen that yet, but I will be watching it. Not necessarily for Aaron, mostly just to watch Garrett Wilson versus Sauce, because that's like the highlight of all Jets camp highlights for me. But yeah, lots to talk about today. EJ, how you doing?
I'm good. Jets, I think, have a lot of must-see TV, and it's not just Aaron Rodgers, but we will talk about Mr. Rodgers a lot today because he's obviously a central piece of the hype that's building around the Jets. He may be the central piece, but we liked this team last year. We liked the personnel that was being assembled by Joe Douglas and his crew. We still like them. They've continued to do that. They were a quarterback short. Presumably, they're not a quarterback short anymore. We like Robert Saleh. We like the way that he's changed the culture of this team. There was a lot of reasons to be excited about this team, but we also, speaking of Rich Eisen's thought in the back of his head, weren't too excited because we didn't think that the quarterbacking was going to take the next step, and that in the NFL means you're going to be mid at best, and the Jets were a little less than mid, but this year it's very different for one particular reason with all those other things that we're excited about. So when you talk about legitimate hype, legitimate hope, yeah.
By the way, a warning, EJ, before we really get going here. Fucked up the diver down a little bit.
You goofed.
Put a little bit too much Bacardi into this, so we'll see what I'm looking like at the end of this show.
You didn't remember your lesson. A little is good. A lot is not necessarily better.
Yeah, this went from just a beer to a sledgehammer in about half a second extra on the pour. So, future me is going to pay the price for this. But in the meantime, I'm going to feel great while talking about the Jets. I do want to preface this by saying, yes, they were aggressively mid last year. And so we're going to take the 2022 part of this show as quickly as we can so that Jets fans don't leave us en masse. But we do have to talk about 2022 a little bit to contextually set the table for everything we're going to talk about in 2023.
That's right. We think this year is going to be better, so we'll speed run it. Last year, 2022, New York Jets, overall 7-10, rank in the division. Close your ears. 4th, home record 3-5, road record 4-5. Last 5 games, this is the worst part, 0-5.
Yeah, that was not ideal. Not even a little bit.
That's one way to put it. Not ideal is being extremely kind. But we do have our effectiveness summary. Again, this is all for last year. We do believe a lot of this will change for this year, but we do have to go through it. So we take EPA per play as our base stat. We talk about rushing offense, passing offense, rush defense, pass defense, points scored, and points allowed. Those are our 6 measurements. We take their league rank. So the rushing offense for the 2022 Jets, 22nd league. Not a great rushing attack. Jets fans are used to a little bit more production than that. And again, had a lot to do with injuries, and we know why that was. We think it'll change for this year. Passing offense, this really comes down to the quarterback position. They were 30th in the league.
Yikes.
Second to last. Not going to win a lot of games in the NFL with a passing attack that is that toothless. That's just what we're going to call it.
If your hope and savior is Mike White, you're in trouble.
Hey, Mike White slander will not be tolerated.
Better than the other guy.
Better than the other guy. And that's why. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, we know Robert Saleh is a defensively focused head coach. Jeff Ulbrich, very good defensive coordinator. And that showed up in their numbers. Rush defense, 16th in the league. Plenty good enough to win in the modern NFL. If you are exactly mid-pack in the league in rush defense, you are fine. Pass defense, 5th. New York Jets, top 5 pass coverage unit in the NFL in 2022. I think a lot of people wouldn't put it that high. Most people certainly saw the super heroics of one Sauce Gardner last year and thought, gee, that's nice. But as a team, top 5? No. Yes, they were. Points scored. This directly correlates to that passing rank. They were 29th in the league in points scored. They only scored 296 points.
Yeesh.
Any number starting with a 2 there is not good.
Now say the good one.
Points allowed. Only allowed 316 points. 4th. So again, tale of two cities in New York. Offense on one side, defense on the other. And that's been the case for the last couple of years. This is why Aaron Rodgers' addition brings so much hope. If you take that defense both for rushing, passing, and scoring and combine it with an even competent offense, you can understand why people are excited in Gotham.
They don't even need Rodgers to be MVP Rodgers. They just need Rodgers to be like 70% of our baseline expectations for it to be quite possibly the best Jets quarterback ever, and B, for them to not just be a playoff contender, but to be the level above that. And that's the ultimate goal, right? Is we want to be able to battle it out with Cincy and Buffalo and obviously Kansas City for the AFC, like the entire conference. If Rodgers isn't even at the height of his powers, is 80%-ish of that, plus the defense, plus ideally the run game getting better when Breece gets right. Or, by the time this goes out, maybe they'll assign Dalvin. Who knows, right?
Who knows?
That's the recipe for not just winning the AFC East, but winning the whole damn thing. Not to get too far ahead of myself, but that's why they were willing to pay whatever they needed to pay to get Rodgers, was for that hope and prayer.
We've said it a lot of times on this podcast. If you don't have a quarterback, you're not going anywhere in this league. New York Jets have had just about everything except a quarterback, and they were done with that. So they were going to fix it one way or another. Anyways, if you take those 6 league ranks, add them up and divide by 6, you get a number that we've come up with this year called the Bootleg Power Score. For the Jets, that was 18. That put them seriously mid-pack. There were about 6 teams that came out with a Bootleg Power Score of 18. And strangely enough, for the Jets, when you stack them overall with the rest of the league, they were 18th overall. So they had a bootleg power score of 18, and it also placed them 18th in the entire league.
And if their offense was just not ass, they would have been one of the top 5 teams in the league, if not better than that. So again, that's what we're trying to convey here is defense, more than fine. Offense, they just need it to be fine. Now, specifically with schematic stats, and we always bring these up for every single team to try to give more context to the EPA numbers. You mentioned that, maybe people knew the Jets' pass defense was good, but they didn't realize it was a top 5 pass defense by EPA. It's not just the fact that they have Sauce Gardner. It's the fact that they have Sauce Gardner, which allows them to call their coverages a certain way. If we look at their coverage split, even by Robert Saleh standards, who always was a guy who leaned pretty heavily into quarters and quarter half and all that kind of stuff, even by his standards, they went completely overboard on it last year. They were first in the NFL in calling quarters at 26.6%, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but compared to the rest of the NFL is a ton. And quarter half, they were 6th in the NFL. And again, for Jets fans that are not familiar with this show, that are finding us for the first time, quarter half is literally you're playing quarters on one side of the field and you're playing cover 2 on the other side of the field. And depending on how the formation is for the offense, depending on which corner you have on which side, depending on if you're game planning against a certain receiver, that'll determine which side is the quarter side and which side is the half field side. And it's all a game plan specific thing. But all you need to know is they played a lot of it. And then cover 1, they were 10th because, again, if you have the corners that they had, 3rd and medium, sure, let's dial up cover 1 and just let our guys play man and protect them in the post, and that's all we really have to do. Conversely, they were 30th in 0 because they didn't need to throw a lot of bodies at you to generate pressure. They were 30th in cover 2 because why would we ever do that when we have Sauce Gardner? Like, we're not just going to stick him in the flat and let him just kind of hang out. Like, no, we're going to actively use his cover skills. They were 27th in cover 3 because with their defensive line, they didn't feel like they necessarily had to go into 8-man spacing to play the run effectively. They could do it from 2 high looks, whether it's quarters or quarter half, do all the spill and kill stuff and thrive, right? Like, they were 16th, which isn't like amazing, but the fact that they could be 16th in run defense EPA while not playing cover 3 is pretty impressive. And that's kind of the goal, right? Is just slow them down against the run and absolutely demolish the pass game. So that's kind of why their mix is that way. And then 2-man, they were 24th, mainly because if they wanted to go man coverage, you don't have to protect Sauce with a half-field safety. Like, no, we're going to play cover 1. We're not going to play 2-man. So that's why their coverages are the way they are. Specifically with cover 1, because we have the corners we have. Quarters, again, because quarters essentially plays out like man a lot of the time. It's man with zone cover principles, so you still get to use Sauce in press man looks in quarters, whether he's backside or whether he's front side, and then quarter half, same thing. So they were really leaning into their DB's ability to cover man to man, and they were really leaning into their defensive line ability to play the run without having an extra guy in the box. And that is the recipe for a dominant defense, is if you have the dudes where you can get away with doing all that, you're probably going to be top 5 in points allowed, which they were.
We've talked about it throughout this series. There's a lot of teams in the league now that come from the Fangio tree, and those teams relied on having the guy at corner who they could leverage those cover concepts off of or away from. Like you said, you're not going to give Sauce a lot of help. That gives you a free defender who normally would be committed to a half shade, sort of seeing him, and you don't have to. You can literally just let him do Sauce things on that side of the field and then get creative with that extra defender. Jets are able to do that, so they don't play what we typically think of as a run-stopping coverage a lot in cover 3, but they stop the run just fine.
And then when you look at their defensive line, I mean, this year again, but also last year, when you've got Quinnen Williams, who was playing like, if not the best 3 technique in the entire league, at least one of the top three techniques in the entire league. And, oh, by the way, you can play nose too. You've got John Franklin Myers, who I've always had a soft spot for. You've got Jermaine Johnson, who, by the way, is absolutely lighting up camp. You got Michael Clemens, who is unbelievably terrifying. Like, that is a scary human being. And then, of course, Carl Lawson as well, whenever he's healthy. Like, this defensive line, even before the addition of Al Woods, even before drafting Will McDonald, they were already crazy talented. And that's a big reason why, if you look at their blitz percentage, they were pretty low in blitz percentage because they just didn't have to, right? They were 25th in bringing pressure or bringing 5+ bodies on third and short. They were 27th in terms of blitz percentage on third and medium. That was a down that typically they were just going to play man coverage and suffocate you and just let Quinnen go eat. And they were 30th in blitzing on third and long because that's when they typically do all the quarters and quarter half stuff. So they didn't have to bring extra bodies, so they didn't. And they were still able to absolutely wreck offensive lines with regularity.
And as we've said all series long, teams that blitz a ton don't tend to stunt a lot, and vice versa. And because they didn't blitz a ton, they stunted at the second highest rate in the league. They loved their stunts because they could have their lanes open with 4. And again, you've talked about the mix of guys they have up front, the different types of rushers, the different types of talent. You got to account for Big Q. He's playing so well that he can just mash the inside, let somebody run around, clean lane to his right or left. They did that very effectively, didn't need to bring extra pressure, and still created pressure with stunts instead of an extra guy.
I think that's a big reason why they went after Will McDonald. And we'll get into that more when we talk about their draft class, but I think a big reason why they went after McDonald is, hey, we need speed and athleticism so that we can get a looper quickly from the edge inside behind Quinnen, inside behind, John Franklin Myers, or Al, if Big Al is still there on third down. Love Carl Lawson, more of a power rusher, not necessarily as explosive side to side. Same thing with Jermaine Johnson. Like, he's more fluid than Carl, but like, if we just need somebody who can teleport from outside to inside in 2 steps, that's Will McDonald. And so I think they're going to lean even more into stunts just because they have that slasher now that can pay those off at an even higher clip than they already had. Switching over to the offensive side of the ball, this ideally is going to stay fairly similar. Again, if Breece is healthy, or even if, again, they bring in Dalvin. We're recording this on, was it August 2nd?
Correct.
So they haven't signed Dalvin yet, but maybe they have by the time this goes out. I don't know. We'll see. But regardless of who's getting the ball in that backfield, they're all built for outside zone. That is what this team, even looking at the offensive line, is what they're built to do. And they were 8th in outside zone last year at about 34%. They were 23rd conversely at inside zone. They were 32nd at duo. This is not a gap scheme team whatsoever. They ran it 4% of the time. They were 4th in power and 13th in counter. So when defenses, especially loaded up against that interior trio with bare fronts or tight fronts or anything of that nature, where it's like, hey, we are clogging every single lane, we are forcing early cutbacks, we are making it hard to run outside zone, they would respond with either counter or power to just wash bodies down and then pull a guy up and through. Small note, by the way, sometimes when it comes to charting, power and counter, it can be the same play call, but if a defense plays a puller a certain way, or if they play a backside tackle a certain way, it can end up looking like the other one. Because the only difference between counter and power is the pulling guard kicking out the edge, or is the pulling guard wrapping up inside and through and having somebody else like a fullback kick out the edge, right? And sometimes, depending on how the defense plays it, a power call can essentially turn into counter because the puller has to go wider, or a counter call can turn into power because of how they play it, and then they have to pull in tighter. So I'm not saying it's flawed charting. I'm just saying sometimes shit gets wrecked on the field, and one concept can look like the other. regardless, if we just add them together, it's 21% you're pulling guards, right? So that was a heavy component of their run game when people would clog up the centers and the guards was, all right, we're going to wash everybody down. We're going to pull around. We're going to annihilate some poor safety on the second level. Bada bing, bada boom. Breece has open space. So hopefully all that made sense. Also, pin and pull, they were 8th. So it was a pretty heavy component of their run game was using pullers, getting guys out in space, all that kind of stuff. I would imagine we're going to see just as much of that this year, with possibly a little bit more inside zone if they want to get in the gun and have Aaron do some of the RPO stuff that he's really good at. But quite frankly, I have no idea, and we might not really get a sense of that till like October.
Basically what that boils down to is outside zone was their primary, and if they needed to switch up punches like a boxer, power, counter, and pin and pull were their body shots.
Mm-hmm.
That was how they responded when people said, nope, we're going with extra guys to the edges, we're loading up, we're getting wide with extra safeties. It's like, oh yeah? Okay, cool. We'll drill your ribs. And that's how they did it.
Passing offense overview. Oh, God, Jets fans, I'm so sorry.
Just go fast. It's like a Band-Aid. Just rip it off real fast.
I want to emphasize this is not going to be the same this year. So we're going to go through this as fast as we can. They were 19th in play action last year. They were 18th fastest in average time to throw. You could bet your ass that's going to be quicker this year. Mm-hmm. They were 14th in air yards percentage at about 54%. That one actually might possibly be similar just because Aaron gets it out so quick and gives guys catch and run opportunities. So they might be more yak heavy in a good way, right? Doesn't, being yak heavy isn't a bad thing, but no. So that one actually might be relatively the same, but average depth of target, they were 12th. However, big time throw percentage, they were 23rd. So Zach Wilson was not afraid to air it out, but boy, he wasn't real good at hitting them. So that's going to improve almost by default by having Aaron there. And then this one definitely going to improve yards per attempt, 6.7, 29th in the NFL. So, God willing, this pass game will be 10 or more places higher than it was last year, and that's probably enough.
And like you said, it doesn't even require Aaron to be at the height of his powers, his MVP level, I'm going to take a team to the Super Bowl solely on my back. He doesn't have to do any of that. The roster that Joe Douglas has assembled, that Saleh and his coaches are coaching up, is good enough to support him. He can be a cog, a very good one. Again, we're talking about a Hall of Fame level player who is not at the end of his rope, we think. But he doesn't have to be that pinnacle. He doesn't have to be the guy driving the offense. He can be just very good, which would be pretty easy for him given his past performances. And all these numbers, well, most of these numbers are going to change for the better.
Let's get into the power structure. And I want to note something first here. Because we are going to mention Nathaniel Hackett, who they brought over to be their new OC. Did you see his response to Sean Payton?
I did.
I thought it was phenomenal. And I think it's easy to see why the players like him so much, and especially why Aaron likes him so much. That was the best response I think he could have possibly made. And he's a better man than me for being able to be so eloquent about it.
It was, I think, the right tone. And you're right. There's a very thin slice for him to hit there. He can't say nothing and say it's no big deal and just kind of shove it off because then he's dodging it.
Mm-hmm.
He can, but probably shouldn't and didn't go back in on Sean Payton and light him up because that's good for the tabloid sales, but that's not really good for anything else. So he's got a very narrow landing strip to say, yeah, we heard it. Yeah, we acknowledge that people have things to say. Basically we'll settle it on the field. I wouldn't have gone that way. All right.
I don't know if Broncos Jets is primetime, but I really hope it is.
They're not flexing games that early in the season, but maybe they should.
I think, God, who was it? Was it Tyson? Somebody said that their game now should just be a cage match between Hackett and Payton at midfield.
That should be the coin toss, I think.
Oh, God, yes. Please. Arm wrestle it. But the rest of their power structure beyond Nathaniel Hackett is, again, one that we really do love. And so far, even though the win totals hasn't been what we wanted from the Saleh Douglas era, I'm still just as confident in them now as I was 2 or 3 years ago.
Love the handshake between the two, and that's one of the most important relationships we see in all of pro football, is a GM and a head coach on the same page who understand each other. Largely came in, one might have picked the other, but in terms of a rival space, they're in the same plane. They have contracts that are linked together, and we see that at other teams, and those are the teams that are most successful, where it's not the coach saying, well, this is what I want, and the GM saying, well, this is what I'm going to do, and it doesn't match up. It does here. Douglas has had a couple, I'd say 3 now, very good drafts. He's restocked this roster. They've already eaten their salary cap pill. That was years ago. This is their load up. This is their run. They really wanted to go on it last year. Didn't have the quarterback. We've talked about that. But he continues to add talent to this team, and one of the best doing it in the NFL. Easily a top 10 GM in the NFL for me. Robert Saleh, great leader. We've seen some real ups and downs in his first couple of years. He, too, much like Nathaniel Hackett, could have taken low roads, could have broken, could have showed, what a lot of lesser coaches have, which is the captain panicking on the bridge of the ship. Never going to be Robert Saleh.
No.
He is going to be steady at the helm and drive this team through, continue to make them better. He's showing that again this year, despite the circus. It's a new challenge. It's like all the positive this year instead of just all the hype in general. I think he's doing a great job as a leader. Nathaniel Hackett, say what you will about him as a head coach, but there are a lot of coaches like this in the NFL. Vic Fangio, for instance, who, when he got the head spot, it really wasn't his thing.
Yeah.
But he's a hell of a coordinator. And the greatest success we've seen Nathaniel Hackett have is as an offensive coordinator with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, go figure.
So we got 2 things here. We got him back in his, most favored position in terms of results with his favorite quarterback of all time. And that relationship, Rodgers came out and spoke very directly about that. That was his answer to the Sean Payton comments, was basically caping up for Hackett and saying, keep my coach's name out of your mouth, meaning Hackett. We haven't seen that from Aaron before. He's done more of that.
Has he
behind
ever
the scenes.
defended anybody like? I've never seen him defend a coach like that.
Like that. It's new, but this is a relationship that the Jets are hoping to leverage. It's really what, quite honestly, if we're being out in the open about it, what the Broncos were hoping to leverage.
That's why they hired him.
They just couldn't close the Rodgers part of the deal, so we could have seen a very different Broncos tenure for Hackett. It didn't work out. He goes back down to the offensive coordinator level. He's had the best success there. He's got Rodgers in his back pocket. He's got an offense that has lots of talent around him. This is a really good spot for Nathaniel Hackett. So kind of wash away the memory of head coaching and how that went in Denver. Obviously wasn't great. He's back, I feel like, where he should be and where he's had the best results, and that's really good news for Jets fans. Defensive coordinator, I already mentioned him once, Jeff Ulbrich, came over with Saleh from San Francisco. Really strong, I would call old school defensive coordinator. Loves his team to hit. Bootleg shot of the week was heavily populated by New York Jets players last year.
Especially Quincy.
Quincy was a regular in that segment, and there's a reason. That is what Ulbrich coaches in. He is also incredibly fundamentally sound. We talked about their ability to stop the run from a less traditional run-stopping coverage and having great success with it. That's individual effort. It's responsibility for your own gap. It's playing with the guy next to you, not for him. Ulbrich coaches a very solid defense in Saleh's mold, but I think he'll get, meaning Ulbrich, head coaching opportunities sooner rather than later because the defense has been outstanding in New York. And then Brant Boyer is a special teams coordinator, but overall, this is a very strong group.
Their assistant coaches underneath that level also awesome. Shout out Ron Middleton. I mean, there's not very many humans that I've never met that I think I would take a bullet for. He's one of them. He is so incredibly inspiring and such a good position coach. Anytime he gets mic'd up, I watch it just because I love listening to Ron Middleton speak about anything. And then John Vieira, the instructional designer, I want you to wax poetic about what an instructional designer actually is because, fun fact, for bootleggers out there watching this, you spent a large part of your life doing instructional design as your career. So if anybody can tell us what the fuck that actually is, it's you.
Yeah, and Ron Middleton, before I get on to that, the whole reason he's on this list is because he's your guy.
He is my guy.
I know that listening to him makes you ready to run through walls, so I couldn't go through this list without putting him on there. But John Buer I wanted to put on here because we haven't seen this title before, or I haven't highlighted it in any of our assistant coaching summaries, and it's an important one. Several coaches employ one now, and some other teams I know employ them, but I've never seen one listed in the coaching structure. Usually they're listed in the staff side. So that's notable that Saleh thinks this is important enough to include him in the coaching side. That's a pretty important distinction in a lot of NFL buildings. I did this job for a lot of my life, and it's basically at a high level, at a sort of 30,000-foot view, taking information and figuring out how you can convey that to people who need to understand it as quickly and cleanly as possible. When you're an NFL coach, you've got a lot of new guys that are rotating in and out of the program. You have a lot of information that you have a very small and limited amount of time to convey, and they have to get it right. And if they don't, there's serious consequences. So employing somebody who's a professional to say, how can we streamline that process? How do the learners learn the best? How can we package that? Largely, that's what instructional design is finding better ways, more efficient ways. You hear about tablets all the time now. That's just one piece of it. That's a mechanism. But what do they put on those tablets? Are there learning games? Do you gamify learning? How do you quiz? How do you test? When somebody is away from the facility, that's all something an instructional designer is going to do to help bolster the coach's efficiency. Coaches are still going to coach the same way on the field, but there's all this meeting time away from the facility, players getting up to speed, identifying weaknesses and putting resources towards those to basically increase that learning and make it more effective. It's a huge job, and it's a huge part of what every NFL team does. So I wanted to highlight him because it's the first one I've seen listed on the coaching side, and that's significant. We're going to see more and more of this.
It's such an important thing to learn how humans learn.
Yep.
Because everybody has a different background. Everybody, in their own education growing up, were good at certain subjects or weren't good at other subjects, or, some people's brains are just wired differently. Like I couldn't do math. I had to take algebra. I'm not even kidding, 3 times in college, like base level college algebra, which was like a high school level algebra class. Couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, geometry, didn't even study, got an A on the final because my brain is more wired for geometry. Mm-hmm. And some people are just like that. Some people have learning disabilities. Some people have dyslexia. How do you teach somebody, or rather, how do you design and install for a concept for a guy who might struggle to read the playbook? Are there other avenues? Is there auditory? Is there visual? That's what that job does, is it 100%. Helps people learn at maximum efficiency, so that when you're out there on 3rd and 7, you're calling a certain coverage call and it becomes something else based on formation. They don't fuck it up because they learned it. So it actually does translate on the field. And so much about football is just, can you retain information that coaches give you? Because how stuff is drawn up for a reason, but it's on the players, or rather on the coaches, to get the players to understand how it's drawn up so they don't mess it up.
And in the old school way, it was, learn it or get out.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of flex to the things you talked about. Different learning styles, different experience, different speed, different communication styles. Communication is a huge part of learning, both from the instructor to the folks who need to learn it and back. And that, quite frankly, drove a lot of very valuable resources on both sides, coaching and player, out of NFL buildings. Because it was like, oh, well, you coached it and they didn't pick it up, so you're fired as a coach, or that guy can't, quote unquote, learn the playbook in the one way that we gave it to him. Largely an overload scenario, let's be honest. So we're going to dump him, and some other team's going to pick him up, and he's going to have success there because maybe some assistant coach takes him under their wing and says, hey, let's figure out how we can get this downloaded to you. And now teams are realizing that this is not only an efficiency, but it's also like a market inequity, right?
Yeah.
If we can do this better than other teams, more of our players will develop more fully, and we'll get to keep the assets that we've acquired through the draft, free agency, or otherwise.
And maybe our draft hit rate will be better.
Yeah, and if you can draw the line in the middle, you're going to run less of those guys out of the building, and it also allows you to catch the wider net.
Yeah.
Somebody that is coming into your program or system that maybe has that knock. Oh, we hear this all the time. Slow learner, couldn't pick up the playbook. Maybe there's a reason for
Chad
that.
Ochocinco got run out of New England because they said he couldn't learn the playbook. That's Ochocinco. You're telling me he's a bad football player?
Nope.
No, it's because you're bad at teaching your system.
That's right. And it comes down to the same thing that a lot of people say about dogs, right? There's no bad dogs, there's just bad owners. I think there are very few bad football players at this level, but there are a bunch of bad teachers. And you need to weld the two together, and that's what this job ideally does.
Now, with everything that we've talked about and waxed poetically, looking at the schematic information, looking at the coaching structure, new OCs, old DCs, new quarterbacks, well, not veteran receivers, but young, exciting receivers.
Young veteran.
Yeah. One of the 10 best already in the NFL, and Garrett Wilson, reigning Offensive Rookie of the Year. With all of that stuff that we've talked about so far in mind, I have been really struggling, not going to lie, in terms of trying to figure out how high is too high for Garrett Wilson as a primary example.
Yeah.
I had hoped that because he's still a young player, I was going to get him at a slight discount. That is not the case. He's going overall 13th in fantasy drafts. So if you're in a 14-team league, he's a first-round pick. If you're a 12-team league, he's going at the turn. You are getting 0 discount on Garrett Wilson. He is wide receiver 8 overall. You are still getting 0 discount on Breece Hall. He's RB11, even coming off injury. You're getting virtually no discount on Aaron Rodgers. He's QB 16. I mean, even Tyler Conklin is TE 24. Like, he's a solid TE 2. There's pretty much no value to be had with the Jets offense if you're trying to draft them in fantasy. And so really what I'm struggling with is how high is too high? Am I so confident in this Jets offense with Aaron Rodgers that I don't care what the price is, I want a piece of it? That part I haven't figured out yet.
I'd say for select pieces, largely Aaron and Garrett, I might be willing to jump over that line and say, I'm getting production no matter what. I don't care. I'm taking them. Because like you said, Garrett Wilson had a ton of production with a super shaky quarterback situation, which is why nobody's giving any discount on him, because they're like, well, his quarterbacking got better and he was already good. He's super young. He's not at his ceiling yet. Go for it, right? So that one I might be willing to push, especially if I was a Jets fan, right up to the very top and say, I will do what it takes to get Garrett Wilson. Rodgers, I'm a little cooler on, but I also, my religion, will never bet against Aaron Rodgers because he has gutted me for 15 years. So until he proves that his arm has fallen completely off his body, he's going to produce.
Breece at RB11, even coming off injury, slightly surprising. You think it's more a reflection on people not having any confidence whatsoever in running backs this year, or are people just trusting medical science at this point where ACL tears don't matter?
I think ACL tears do matter, and especially in that first year, you lack explosion. We see players getting back on the field extremely quickly, 6 months sometimes from their tear. They're back and cutting on the field, but they don't typically have that pop until they are a full year removed from the injury, at least sometimes a full year removed from their return, from their quote-unquote healthy return. There are exceptions. Adrian Peterson, cough, cough.
Yes.
But they have a very good offensive line. They have proven that they will lean on the run despite having some very good pass-catching weapons. And Breece was a super high pick overall. So I think it's people sort of just going, I'm going to will this into being because it's the right offense. He's got a very good offensive line. He's a highly drafted player who was productive before his injury. He'll be back enough. To me, it feels high, but like just a little high because Breece Hall was my RB1 the year he came out. When he hit the league, he showed why. And I think people might just be a little bit early to it. That's what I mean by a
I
little
think they'd
too
rather be early than late.
That's it.
Because when you look at what Salah is saying, he's saying, oh, he's in great shape. He'll be back in a few weeks. Which for me, I'm like, means he's not back yet.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I don't know. It's like, when you say a few weeks, you mean week 1? Like, is that what we're looking at here?
I don't think so. The Jets' plan, and this has come up many times now because of Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
And the potential of signing Dalvin Cook. And people saying, look, it would be the best if they rested Breece for 6 weeks. Just didn't even play him.
That's what I would do.
Right. In terms of long-term health, we see it a lot of times. That is a welcome approach. It's a smart approach. And if you can sign Dalvin and do that, I think it probably would be best.
Yeah, because if I'm the Jets, I don't give a single shit if I have Breece Hall in September. I care if I have him in January. So, like, who cares? Like, sign Dalvin, get through the first part of the season when Dalvin still got juice. Like, what do we... Again, Super Bowl is what we care about here.
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers took a $35 million pay cut. Give part of that to Dalvin, get through the middle of October, make sure Breece is 100%, ease him back in so he's at the height of his powers by January, run for 1 billion yards in January, and go win a fucking ring. Like, why is this such a discussion?
It doesn't feel super hard, and, if you don't have to crank him up, Breece, up, till the end of October, that's 2 full months after training camp for him to just be chomping at the bit, come in with 0 mileage on his legs. I mean,
Yes.
fresh legs in the middle of the season, that's going to be devastating. He's a extremely driven player. He's a very physical player. And if he comes in fresh and you've been holding him back, like you've been holding the reins for 2 months and you finally let that guy off the chain, he's going to tear people up.
And you can pay Dalvin, like, $7 million for a year. Like, it's nothing. Who cares? If $7 million is the price you got to pay to make sure that Breece Hall, who is a super weapon when he's healthy, if you could pay $7 million to make sure that you don't bring him back earlier than you need to, that's nothing. Woody, you have billions of dollars. You can part with $7 million to make sure that your football team has the best possible chance to win a Lombardi. Come on now.
Yeah, Aaron already gave you the money, so
Exactly.
It's not even a loss.
Aaron's got like $500 million himself. You don't think he doesn't care?
Nope.
He doesn't need the money at this point.
He just wants to win the ring.
Yeah, so he can rub it in Green Bay's face.
Yeah, he just wants to win the ring.
So he can rub it in Green Bay's face. Or rather rub it in Chicago's face. Because if he can be an owner of Chicago from both Green Bay and New York at the same time, that's his happy place.
It's a very, very talented portfolio, that one.
Overall, the message to take away here is you're getting no discounts with the Jets offense. And nor should you be. We think they're going to be really good. We think that most of them are going to be worth the price. Again, Breece, I'm probably not taking at RB11 just because I think the smart thing to do is to not play him early. But Garrett at wide receiver 8, fine. Rodgers at QB 16, fine. I don't care.
Sure.
I'll pay that price because I know they're going to be really good.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in best ball, where what I really want is spikes.
Yeah.
Stacking them together is a swell plan to me. Because if Rodgers is throwing for 300 and giving Garrett 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, guess what? I'm getting all those points together. And then I just win. So I'm probably going to have them stacked together quite frequently in my normal leagues and in best ball. And if you yourself are also a big believer in Garrett Wilson, I know, going out on a limb, and you're a big believer in Rodgers still being Rodgers, and even if you're a big believer in Breece, use promo code Bootleg over at Underdog Fantasy. You can draft all of them in best ball leagues right now. We are at the height of fantasy season, and best ball in particular is great for people who are good at preparing for drafts and don't necessarily care that much about doing the grind of waiver wires and fab budgets and all that kind of stuff. If you're good at drafting, you're going to like best ball because you literally just draft your team once, and then every single week, like you don't have to set a lineup. Every single week, whoever on your roster scores the most points in any given week, at receiver, at running back, at tight end, you get credit for the players on your team that are performing the best. So as long as you're good at drafting, you can let, best ball leagues do the rest for you, and it's going to calculate your best possible lineup every single week. So it does prioritize, or rather favor, people that do off-season research, i.e. listening to this show and getting a lot of information on every single team. It helps people that do off-season research. It helps people that are really good at drafting, and also it pays a lot of money too, because there are $15 million in prizes on Best Ball Mania 4 right now. So if you're a Jets fan and you believe that Garrett Wilson is worth the price, and you believe that Rodgers is worth the price, and you believe in Calvin Ridley, you believe in Anthony Richardson, you believe in all these guys that we've talked about throughout this entire series, go draft them, go win some money. Use promo code Bootleg. They'll match your deposit up to $100. So you get basically $100 free if that's what you deposit, or 10 or 20 or whatever it happens to be. Also, they paid for this entire series, so the best way to thank them for all this content is depositing, whatever you want to over on Bootleg or over on Underdog using promo code Bootleg.
There you go.
Is that a good enough ad read, EJ?
Or clicking on the QR code on the screen.
Oh, right. Yeah, we got a QR code now. We asked for one, and they gave it to us.
They were like, that's a great idea. So you can literally take your mobile phone, put it up to your computer screen, click on it. If you already have the Underdog app up, it will take you directly to the page. Give us credit for that. If you don't have the Underdog app installed, it will take you to the App Store, and you can download it.
I love that they just said yes to that immediately and just gave it to us. We just said, hey, we have a really weird idea. Can you make us a QR code? And they're like, sure.
That sounds great.
That sounds cool.
That's why they're good partners. That's why we love working with them. They were like, that's really cool. Let's try. So use the QR code if you want to.
All right, EJ. Let's get to free agency. This is one of the largest free agency lists, if not the largest, of this entire series. If there's one thing that Joe Douglas really takes pride in, it's just an absolutely obnoxious amount of transactions every single year, and this year is no different.
One of the biggest lists we've seen, without a doubt. Some names of import and just a lot of names overall. So I'm just going to skip across the top of the waves here, talk about the ones that I think probably had the biggest impact or that the Jets will feel the most. Ty Johnson, the running back. Ty Johnson's had a really big role for this team. On a lot of teams, Ty Johnson moving on wouldn't be a big deal, but at the end of the last 2 seasons, he's played a really big role for New York. He's not going to be there. They have a plan in the running back room. This isn't a panic moment, but just more of a shout out to Ty Johnson for being a very solid Jet and an impactful one over the last couple of years. LaMarcus Joyner, the safety, played 76, almost 77% of their snaps. Quan Alexander at linebacker played 50. Joe Flacco came in his savior moments. He only played a quarter of the snaps, but they were big ones. Again, they'll be leaning on Zach Wilson in the QB2 role this year. George Fant, the right tackle, just under 50% of the snaps. He moves on as well. Elijah Moore gets traded to the Browns, 66% of the snaps. A lot of people, I think, would have said that he played less. We both hope that Elijah Moore balls out because we had high grades on him. It never really clicked for him in New York. That happens sometimes with players. Fresh start for both sides. Mike White, quarterback, also moves on to the Dolphins. Again, he took the other quarter of the quarterback snaps for the Jets. He won't be there for them to lean on this year either. And then Braxton Berrios, the classic wide receiver 3 and special teams demon, also goes with Mike White to the Dolphins. He played about a quarter of the snaps at wide receiver and special teams. They'll feel that a little bit. Nate Herbig, the right guard, signs a deal with the Steelers. He was good for about 64% of their snaps. And then Sheldon Rankins on the interior of the defensive line played just about 50% of the snaps. But again, in a rotation, that's pretty significant. And he moves on to your Texans.
Wow, Braden Mann erasure. What the hell, EJ? Punters exist too.
Not for me.
Looking at who they did bring back. Quinnen, obviously, not bring back. This is more just an extension than a re-sign. But Quinnen, $24 million a year, puts him near the top of the IDL contract rankings. Obviously, nobody's going to touch Aaron Donald for a bit because his deal is bigger than everybody else by far. But as far as everybody else who's not Aaron Donald, Quinnen's right at the very top.
And shout out to Nicole Lynn, who we met when we met each other at the 2020 Senior Bowl.
She's negotiated how many hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts this offseason?
She is crushing it. Absolutely. So Quinnen Williams, agent at Clutch Sports now, head of their sports division. Nicole Lynn is absolutely smashing it for her clients, and Quinnen is just the next one in line.
And she's utterly ruthless in a good way, right? As soon as the Jets got announced for Hard Knocks, I tweeted out, I was like, Quinnen's deal is going to get done because
they don't want it not to be done on Hard Knocks.
More so, they know, like, hey, Nicole will make this an issue for you on Hard Knocks if you allow this to bleed into training camp. And then not even 24 hours later, the deal was done. Because they're like, we are not going to fuck with her. we're gonna pay him $96 million guaranteed. Thank you very much. We would rather do that than deal with the wrath of Clutch Sports on this issue.
Smart play. Move on.
Quincy Williams, another member of the Williams family, $6 million a year, also brought back. Jordan Whitehead at 5.2, Connor McGovern at 1.9, Carl Lawson, the ageless Carl Lawson, $9 million a year now for him. Bryce Huff, also brought back at $4.3 million. And then third-party additions, non-Jets that they threw some money at. The biggest names here, Mecole Hardman at $4 million a year, brought him over from the Chiefs. Alan Lazard, by request of Aaron Rodgers, at $11 million.
He actually signed before Rodgers got traded.
Well, yeah, but we know why. Like, we know why they brought in Lazard. Come on now.
Did you see the interview with Lazard where they asked him how he felt about that?
Huh.
And he was like, yeah. And then he was like, for like a couple minutes, I was like, come on, man. And then I was like, I get to play with Aaron Rodgers again.
It's okay. It's okay. He's going to feed me the ball. Speaking of Aaron Rodgers, at the time was at $50.2 million a year. I don't know what it is yearly now after the pay cut.
Yeah.
Some number that's significantly less than that, but still quite a big chunk of change. Adrian Amos they brought in also from the Pack. I mean, if you just look at this list, it's Packers. They also brought in QJeff, Quentin Jefferson. He's still, kind of kicking around there. $3.6 million. Al Woods, the ageless Al Woods at 36 going on 37 to ideally improve their run defense even more. Not that it needs to be vastly improved, but, if we put one of the best run-stopping nose tackles in the entire league in the middle of that line, it could probably only go up. Chuck Clark, also from the Ravens, they traded for him, and then I think he was ACL, right? Like almost immediately after the trade.
Yeah, which is why the Adrian Amos signing happened.
Yeah, I feel bad for Chuck Clark, man. He's such a good dude. I was just gutted for him.
And the fit was really good, too. They would have known, well, they do know how to use a player like Chuck Clark in this defense. He would have been featured. I want to go back to the Jordan Whitehead addition, or re-sign, I should say. At this time last year on this podcast, I said, Jordan Whitehead from the Bucs, underrated addition. He's going to play super well in that defense. Ends up playing 99% of the snaps, and they re-sign him for a much healthier $5.2 million. He was a perfect fit, lock and key. Jets went, yep, we like that. We want more of that, and bring him back at a, much increased and I would say deserved salary.
So they did a great job in March, retaining their core, making a couple nice little, for the most part, value-driven additions. We can argue about the Alan Lazard one being value, but if it helped get Aaron Rodgers, I guess it's worth it. So they did well in March. That brings us to April, where we got to the most fun part, as somebody who's an enjoyer of Joe Douglas. Watching him work the draft once again in April has become just a fun little annual tradition of mine, because I always get to go, ooh, what's Joe going to do now? He crushes it every single year. This year was no different. I truly enjoy watching that man work. And I truly enjoy looking at the draft classes he puts together every year, because very few GMs do it as well as he does. And this year, in true Joe Douglas fashion, he crushed it again.
Killed it at the top. First two picks were extremely strong. And then for me, the rest of the draft was a little bit up and down, but there were still plenty of ups. And again, you're not going to hit every pick in a draft class, but started off with Will McDonald IV out of Iowa State. This is the ultimate sort of boom or bust pick, because he was used out of position in college. There's no other way to say it. They basically played him as a defensive end, even though he's a true...
He has a 4-eye at like 250 pounds.
Yeah, he's a true outside speed edge. They're going to allow him to do that in New York. That was round 1, pick 15. A little bit earlier than a lot of people thought he might go, but his athletic potential off the charts, and if you sort of right shape his role, I think we could see a real explosion from him. Round 2, pick 43, one of my favorite players in the entire draft, center Joe Tippmann out of Wisconsin. We've talked about how important it is to have a very smart and athletically talented center. If you're going to have a serious run game, the Jets have a serious run game. Tippmann is all those things and super well schooled in the run game coming from Wisconsin. Just love his length, his ability to wall off defenders. Just love his play demeanor in general. So was super happy to see him go there. No pick in round 3. Round 4, pick 120, offensive tackle Carter Warren out of Pittsburgh. This is where this is a little bit more down for me. I was like, they need a tackle. It is round 4. I'm not going to get on them for it, but I was meh at this pick, especially after the high of McDonald and Tippmann.
I'm bigger on Carter Warren than you are, though.
Yeah, you were higher on him, so go ahead and talk about Carter Warren.
I think he's got a lot of upside. Athletically, really good athlete. Ton of power. Hand placement was really where he got in trouble. In terms of being able to fit and then refit and, kind of box guys. He's not going to start early because of that, because he would just get eaten alive by guys with good hands. But from an athletic potential and what I think he can be in the future, which is less so swing tackle. I think Max is really like the swing tackle there of the future, but probably a really high-end swing guard is where I think he's eventually going to end up at. And it's kind of you're threading the needle here, because again, I think he's a good athlete, but a good athlete in certain ways. The first step, I'm not 100% sure if it's tackle, but at the same time, his post step inside is super quick. I think his hips are super fluid when he's kind of changing direction, all that kind of stuff. So good athlete, but in a guardy kind of way, not a tackly kind of way, if that makes sense. But again, the hands got to get fixed. So high end swing guard, I think is where he's probably going to end up throughout his career, and that's perfectly okay to me.
Yeah, it's fine. And again, in round 4, like I said, I wasn't negative, like, oh my God, what are they doing? I was lukewarm on it. And if he works out in that way, or really in any way, it's a fine pick. Round 5, pick 143, one of your favorites, running back Israel Abanikanda from Pittsburgh. Absolute hammer with some real speed to the outside. I have a big question mark about where he fits on the depth chart, but that's not his problem.
Yeah.
Like, he is a very good athlete. He is very good at his position at running back. He got chosen by a team that believes in his skills in round 5. I think they just saw it as a value pick at that point. Where he plays or when he plays, because of where he is in the depth chart, again, he's going to have to earn his way up, and they've got a bunch of talented runners in front of him. Not a bad pick. This is sort of back up for me. Like, hey, round 5, and you pick Israel Abanikanda off the ground? Go for it.
Just go back and look at the percentage of outside zone they run, and that explains the pick, because that's what he does. He doesn't really do anything else, at least not well. Like, you're not running gap scheme with him. You're not running inside zone with him. He doesn't have the vision for it. But outside zone in particular, good God, he tears people's face off on outside zone. So as your RB4 probably on the depth chart,
yeah,
where it's, we're giving him like 5 carries, maybe, but they're all going to be an outside zone, and he's so explosive that he can break one of them and give us, like, his explosive play rate at Pittsburgh was nuts. So yeah, we'll give him a few touches a game, and if he breaks one, awesome, because he's somebody who could literally score from anywhere on the field. That's how gifted he is. And I think you could do worse if Breece is not playing early in the year. You could do worse for an RB3 than Israel Abanikanda.
Then we get into the round 6 run. They have 3 picks there, 184, 204, and 220. First one is linebacker Zaire Barnes from Western Michigan. I'm going to give Jeff Ulbrich a pass. Mm-hmm. Like, if he signed off on Zaire Barnes for his system, I bet he's going to be good. Ulbrich was a linebacker in his day as a player. comes from that school of thought as a linebacker, understands what he wants there. Again, round 6, he goes and plucks him. I'm just going to say, good on you. I bet he's going to develop because they kind of always do. Pick 204, cornerback, Jarek Bernard-Converse from LSU. Thought he would go higher, because he had the LSU pedigree, but also just the physical profile. He's a big, fast dude playing in the SEC.
Yeah.
A lot of people were pretty high on him. I did not think he would last pick 204, so not exactly sure why that happened, but again.
Medical.
Oh. See, there you go.
Yeah.
And then the last pick in round 6 for them, last pick of the draft overall, 220, tight end Zach Kuntz from Old Dominion. Physical marvel in terms of size-speed combo, suffered some injuries, was a Penn State transfer, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, was originally at Penn State, ended up at ODU. Again, if he stays healthy, off the charts potential from a size-speed combo, but didn't stay healthy, ended up had good production on the field when he was there. And again, if he can make it back to that level, this pick is more than worth it, but this is all about the 6th-round gamble because of the medical.
Hard to find somebody that big that moves like that.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we know Joe Douglas. It's give me the athlete that doesn't exist on most other teams, and I'm going to take him. Will McDonald, I've talked about at length over and over and over again on this podcast, especially pre-draft. I was a huge Will McDonald fan. I knew that he wasn't going to play the role that he did in college, and that's totally fine with me because he's going to be just a straight flamethrower off the edge. He's going to be a Brian Burns-ish type for them, and that's what he should be. Like, that is his profile. That is what he's good at. When he was actually given chances to rush, like real honest-to-God pass rush reps, it's 3rd and long. We're not just having you soak up 2 blockers, but we're actually putting you on the edge one-on-one against a tackle. His win rate was like one of the best in the class. Like, he is legitimately a gifted pass rusher. He just happened to play at Iowa State and didn't get a whole lot of real chances because Big 12, of course. And then Joe Tippmann, one note on him. I can't remember who it was. I think it was the guys over at Cover One who put this kind of in my brain early on in the draft process where they're like, he's Mitch Morse. And I was like, holy shit, you're right. A big, tall center that is unreasonably good at pulling for his size. That's Mitch Morse. And we talked earlier about how much they love to pull. That's what he's for. Whether he's center or guard, he can pull like crazy. And so if you're in an offense that is heavy in pulling interior offensive linemen as your answer to fronts that are good against all your outside zone stuff, Joe Tippmann's the dude. So I don't know if he's going to start early on because, again, you got Connor McGovern there. Elijah Vera Tucker at guard is great. Tomlinson at guard is great. Might be tough for him to get on the field early, but once he does, it's going to be tough to get him off the field because I think he's that talented.
They're going to see him annihilate people in space. One of his biggest strengths is hitting guys on the move, either at the end of the line or on the second level. And for a guy his size, I would say he has an unnatural ability to do that.
He's just so balanced. Like, how often do you see centers that size that are that nimble in space?
Yeah, he's really tall.
Yeah.
Which sets him apart right there. But his ability reminded me, we talk a lot of times about corollaries to other sports, reminded me of like a very, very big power forward out in space, just hitting much smaller targets.
I wonder if he like played basketball or wrestled or something in his youth.
Sure looks like it.
He's not normal. And then the UDFA class after the draft class also had some really intriguing young guys that we think have a legit shot of not just making the practice squad, but making the roster. Travis Dye from USC. This might be a hot take, I know, because Israel Banakanda is such a freak. And Travis Dye is not a freak athletically. No. Not even remotely in the same realm of existence as a Banakanda as an athlete. But, holy shit, that kid can pass protect. And if there is one thing as a young running back that is UDFA that will get you a job in the NFL, like a real job, you are dressing on Sundays, you are getting game checks, it is pass protection. He was one of the best pass protecting running backs in all of college football. if he wasn't hurt during the pre-draft process, I think that at Shrine Bowl, the one-on-ones would have helped him a lot. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it at Shrine Bowl, but that kid can protect. And if Travis Homer's had his job, has had a job for as long as he has because of pass protection, Travis Dye could too. So I am thoroughly intrigued to see if, if he makes the roster just because of that. Trey Dean III, speaking of Shrine Bowl, super talented safety, has corner experience as well, which for a defense that plays a lot of quarters, having safeties that were also corners is valuable because those safeties tend to have to do a lot of one-on-one coverage down the field. So having people that are experienced doing one-on-one coverage is kind of at a premium. But he's also a really good tackler, great against the run. And we know that this defense is going to be playing a lot of quarters on early downs. So having a safety that can come down and fill the alley from 12 yards deep is super important. He's a great fit for the system, legitimate shot to make the roster again. Deslin Alexander, one of, God, how many Pitt defenders were in this class? Like 10?
Yeah, and this is the guy that was on the other end from Habakkuk Baldonado.
Yeah.
Very different style of rusher. I think UDFA was fair. I had a low draftable grade on him.
I didn't have a
rounder,
draftable
so it
grade
was
either,
a sort of dealer's choice at the end. But again, good landing spot for him, and he has enough skill to make it. Will he start off on the 53? I'd say probably not, just given their stack on the defensive line now. Could they stash a guy like him on the practice squad and have him develop? That feels like the right path.
Xavier Gibson from Stephen F. Austin, who is legitimately 4.3. Like, not just track speed, but game speed, too. Like, you watch him on tape, and you're like, wow, he can run. So we'll see if he makes practice squad just because he's a can opener on offense. And then Jerome Cap, you put wide receiver. How do you pronounce this school? Kutztown?
Kutztown. You know why I put him on there?
I didn't watch him, so I hope you had a reason.
I didn't watch him either. You know why I put him on there?
Why?
Because he's a wide receiver from Kutztown. You know who else is a wide receiver from Kutztown?
Nobody else ever?
Andre Reed.
Andre Reed went to Kutztown?
Correct.
What?
True story.
I had no. So that's like not just a small school, Jim. That's like smallest of small school. That's like the Slippery Rock kid.
Yeah, they
last year.
They don't have a ton of NFL players. They have a few, but Andre Reed was a wide receiver from Kutztown. So Jerome Cap gets the note there. But the other receiver that we have to talk about, because we have the benefit of doing this podcast late enough in the process that we've gotten a bunch of training camp footage, is Jason Brownlee.
Oh, has he been lighting it up? I haven't kept track of that.
So the book on Brownlee was he had a good frame. He's very good at high pointing the ball. He was excellent down the sideline, had really strong hands, but he wasn't going to separate. Sound like anybody you know?
Pickens.
Some very productive receivers in the NFL.
Some Steelers
have
fans
that exact.
Shut this off.
Yeah, you just killed our pit viewing right there. Brownlee has made the most of his chances. Hasn't mattered who the quarterback is, just mossing guys down the sideline. They are in his hip pocket when the ball arrives. Gets up, gets the ball, and comes down with it. Extremely tough at the catch point. That was the book on him, and he is being himself 100%, and it is working at Jets camp. They are going to have to decide whether or not they open him up, because some receiver-needy teams who don't have that skill set are going to look at him and go, I don't know, man. Like, that secondary in New York's pretty good that he's playing against in training camp, and he's been beating them regularly.
What other football podcasts out there are going to dedicate meaningful real estate to UDFA receivers from Southern Miz and Kutztown? Nobody, folks.
Nobody. That's
we
us.
Got you covered.
That is our niche.
All right, let's get to the report card and ceiling and floor, our final two segments here. Report card, if you're new to the series, we have 4 categories that we grade. Essentially, where are they now relative to the end of last season? It's front office, coaching staff, offensive talent, and defensive talent, and one of 3 grades, up, down, or neutral. Neutral is not bad.
Nope.
Neutral is neutral. So if you were good last year and you're good this year, that warrants a neutral. Front office, we're going to go up. Not that we didn't love Joe Douglas before, but the fact that they finally had their put your nuts on the table moment and they went and got Rodgers, and they just finally solved the quarterback issue, even if only temporarily because he's old. Not sitting on their laurels and not wasting this roster that they had built the old-fashioned way, that gets an up from us, because it means that they weren't going to wait and see about Zach Wilson. They weren't going to try to invest in the draft again and try to get another young quarterback again and hope that it worked. And no, we got the roster now. Let's get the guy now.
Same thing we said about Ballard in Indianapolis. They've been kicking the can down the road. They did it a different way. They drafted a rookie who we really like in Anthony Richardson high, but they went and got a quarterback of the future. They needed to do it. They did it. Joe Douglas does it another way, but they needed to do it badly, and they got it done.
Coaching staff, we're going to go neutral because it's pretty much the same. Obviously he brought in Nathaniel Hackett, but I think overall the core of the coaching staff is still the same, and we like this coaching staff, so we're going to go neutral here. Offensive talent, I mean, come on. You brought in Aaron Rodgers.
End of story. Done.
End of story.
It's up.
That's up. Defense, like we said, neutral is not bad. This defense was great last year. They're going to be great this year, possibly even better. That earns a neutral from us. Already being top 5, can't really go up from there. So we're going to go neutral with that grade. So again, we're looking at up, neutral, up, neutral. That means this team that was already knocking on the door in a lot of ways last year, it has only gotten better, and they've gotten better in the most meaningful possible ways.
Yep.
The expectations are high.
You don't say.
I know. Shocker. For ceiling and floor, again, this is ceiling in wins versus floor in wins. So we give a range. We're not just putting our stamp down that this is a X number win team.
Yep.
We give ourselves some margin for error. So what is your ceiling and floor?
My ceiling is 12. And people might say, what are you talking about with Aaron Rodgers and all this offensive talent and a great defense? This could be a 14-win team. This could be... Bump the brakes. It's very difficult to do that in the NFL. This could be a very good, much improved team that wins 12 games and is a serious threat in the playoffs. But they're still in the AFC East, which is murderer's row right now. Miami is very good. Buffalo's been great. They're all going to pull games off of each other. And like I said, I think if this team clicks early, that's only losing 5 games down the stretch, and they could be A, they could make the playoffs, and B, they could be a much bigger threat once they get there, even with a 12-win ceiling.
I'm going to go with a ceiling of 11, which is slightly lower, and again, there's a lot of Jets fans that are offended by that. Winning 11 games in the AFC is not a bad thing. In fact, it's really hard to do. And it's even harder to do it when the NFC division that you're playing this year is the NFC East. So go back and watch our NFC East shows last week and get a good idea of what that slate is for them. Yeah. And, oh, by the way, they also play the Falcons, who spent an ungodly amount of money on their defense this year. We'll see what Ritter is, but they're going to run the shit out of the ball and play good defense. So that's not an easy game either. Plus, they play against their own division, which is a bunch of murderers in their own right. I think 11 wins in that schedule is legitimately great. Yep. You know how many teams would win 11 against that schedule, playing against the AFC East, the NFC East? You're playing against the Browns, who are also very talented in their own right and could be a sleeper power in the AFC. You're playing against the Chargers, who have a super weapon at quarterback and a young receiver who we really like in Quentin Johnston, and, oh, by the way, a really talented defense. Even the Broncos. They're playing against the Broncos again in Week 5.
There's a little motivation there now.
There is a lot of motivation there, but, let's not pretend that the Broncos aren't talented. This schedule is stupid.
It's rough.
So many teams would not survive this schedule. They would fold. They would, lose 10 games going up against that. The fact that I have the Jets as an 11-win ceiling against that schedule is a compliment. And the fact that my floor for them is 9, meaning no matter what, I expect them to have a winning record, is an even higher compliment. So many teams would get shit canned by that schedule. I do not think the Jets will. So overall, I'm positive on them. I think very plausible that they make the playoffs. And once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen. Do I think they're the best team in the AFC East? No. I think Buffalo's better. I think Miami's better. Doesn't mean they're not a great team. Doesn't mean they can't do a lot of damage. Doesn't mean they can't go on a run. They just happen to be in one of, if not the best division in football. It is what it is.
It's going to be a really tough road. I've got my ceiling at 12. I've got my floor at 8 because if all the things we just talked about go the wrong way, if the NFC East is the absolute pile driver again this year, yes, they were that last year. Go check out our power rankings for the division. They could struggle to go 500. And for all the reasons you talked about, Justin Herbert and the Browns getting hot, running the ball and playing tough defense. These are all things that could give them fits. And, I'm not going to hold that against them.
Mm-hmm.
So just like it could all break and go right in my mind and get them 12 wins, it could all break and go the wrong way. Rodgers could get injured. 8 wins is possible. Below that, Salah's not going to let him go.
I mean, after everything they went through last year
Right.
at the quarterback position, they still won 7.
Right.
So hard to go below that. Just say that. So Jets fans should be excited. This probably will not be another lost season like, unfortunately, they've had the last 2 years. They still have the defense. They have the offensive line. In my opinion, they have the offensive line. I know some people would debate that, but to me, they're good. They have weapons. They have the coaches. They have the quarterback. It's all there, folks.
Yep.
It's all there. Like, if they don't win now, what else do you want?
Yeah, if not now, then when is the biggest question. But if you're a Jets fan or a fan of any of the other teams in the AFC East and we have properly charged you up, we should have because we're pretty excited about this team.
Hopefully.
Go check out our clothing partner at homage.com. Use the link down in the description. We get a percentage of every sale, but they've got an NFL license, so they've got about 30 designs for every team, some of the softest hoodies and T-shirts you will ever have. Guarantee they will automatically float to the top of your drawer, and you'll wear them the most often if they're clean. But again, if you support our sponsors, they keep coming back, so help us out.
All right. Well, that was a properly long introduction to the AFC East. We're coming back tomorrow again with the Patriots. Then we got the Dolphins after that. Then we got the Bills after that. And then we are picking a division winner on Friday, which is obscenely difficult. And then we're done with this series. And then we're in the preseason. We're going to have to do preseason episodes like literally right after that, so don't celebrate too much. But
A little. I get to celebrate a little.
you get like 4 days off.
Okay, sweet.
But yeah, come back for the rest of the AFC East. Come back for everything else that we got going this preseason. Come back for all of our Thursday night live streams this year. I mean, we're going to have like 3 pieces of content per week during the regular season. We got a lot going on. So if you like this, stick with us. Go support Underdog. Go support Homage. Support our sponsors so they keep supporting us. And with that, see you guys tomorrow.